Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekly wrap up. I hope everyone has had a good end of the year. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope everybody had a great Christmas, Hanukkah,
Hello,
whatever.
everyone,
Oh my goodness.
and welcome
Shut up.
to another week.
That's what happens when you have your live stream open in another tab. And I don't know why it had volume because this should be muted. Anyway, hi Aisha, welcome to the live stream. I hope you and your family had a wonderful Christmas. I hope it's the 26th, a lot of places, including here. Boxing Day in much of the Commonwealth, Australia, Canada, Britain. I know that that's not quite something that the US does, and that kind of surprised me. I didn't actually realize that until many years into my life. But hey, who says can't learn new things? Not that I did anything for Boxing Day. It typically is sale time, but there were so many sales leading into Christmas that I didn't spend any money today, which is good because my wallet needed the break. Not a huge amount to talk. Well, I say that every week. I'm sure I will still talk plenty about the books that I have read. One digital title, 4 non-digital titles. All manga, though. All manga. Again, busy week, I think, for most people. I didn't really have the time because obviously Christmas and celebrating and entertaining and things like that. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. I feel like people talk about Boxing Day as because they experience it, whether they're in Canada or Australia or England or other parts of the Commonwealth. But yeah, I don't. It's not really that important. I think historically it was a day when the upper class gave the unfortunate gifts or people that were because I always think of it in the context of like wealthy landowners. You would have the common folk who would work for them, whether that be maids and butlers or like farmers or whatever, and that would be a day where in the Christmas season, as a part of noblesse oblige, the upper class would bequeath gifts to their workers, to those who couldn't necessarily afford to buy things themselves. I think historically that's what Boxing Day is or was, but now it's just sale season. It's sales, although I myself and my family have never gone crazy for Boxing Day sales or anything like that. But we're not here to talk about boxing. We are here to talk about manga. So I think I will start with the first thing I read, which was, oh my gosh, okay, I was super excited to start this one. Continue this series, because it's been sitting on my stack of books, my December books, for a little while. I just hadn't gotten around to reading it. And that is volume 2 of Cherry Magic, 30 Can Make You a Wizard. This is a super sweet little series, pretty popular in Japan. I think it has 6 volumes currently. Started as a webcomic and has won a bunch of awards. It now has a live action adaptation, I think, on Crunchyroll. I've seen people tweet about it recently, the live action. And so this is the story about an office worker who, obviously, as the title suggests, is a 30-year-old virgin. And on his 30th birthday, he gains the ability, this magic superpower, in order, and whoever he brushes up against or whoever he touches, he can hear their innermost thoughts. And initially, he's kind of really upset by this. He's unwillingly hearing all of the internal voices of the people around him, namely the I cannot speak, and I haven't had anything to drink today, so I don't know what's wrong. Packed crowds on the train, or also in elevators and things, where he realizes that, and he's always been kind of gloomy. It's this character here, just by the way. Quite gloomy, quite pessimistic. And people have, he's hearing all their negative thoughts, but one day he's in the crammed elevator, and one of his coworkers thinks like, oh my gosh, they're so cute, like I'm so happy that I'm with them. So he realizes that one of his coworkers has a crush on somebody, in the office, and then he later discovers, oh, thank you, Ethan. That's so sweet. You didn't have to feel obliged to come, but I really appreciate that. But so he discovers that not only does somebody have a crush on someone in the office, but that crush, he's the object of that crush. And not only is it just one of his coworkers, it is the most popular, handsome, wonderful guy in the office, who's in sales? I think he is in sales. It doesn't matter. Hello, happy holidays. I hope you've had a great last couple of days, whatever you celebrate. And that goes for everyone watching now and in the future. I hope everyone is having a happy, healthy, safe Christmas or end of year celebration, however you celebrate. But so yeah. He discovers that this guy in his office has a big fat crush on him. He's totally smitten, and he has to kind of deal with that. Has to kind of like figure out what that means for him. And it's just really sweet. It's just really sweet. It's about this guy in his office who has this big crush, but like doesn't want to make it too obvious, but then also wants things to work out romantically between them, obviously. And then our main character, who's this awkward 30-year-old virgin, who doesn't have a huge amount of personal experience with relationships, so he's trying to figure out his own feelings. And yeah, this is really sweet. It's really heartwarming. And despite the title isn't nearly as like weird as it potentially could be. The art is really cute as well. I really recommend the series. Although they are super skinny books from Square Enix, they are definitely worth the time. So this particular volume has the office trip where our characters and the rest of their coworkers go on a like overnight vacation, and in doing so, our characters grow closer in multiple different ways. But there's always kind of a level of misunderstanding or separation that these two awkward guys have to get around, or and then the second half of the book we have Arachi, our main character. He runs into the other character. What is his name? Kurosawa, just out and about, like on outside of work, and he sees him with a really pretty woman, and he think they're arguing, and she's like, "Oh, come on, let me stay around your place," like, And he said, what's going on with the guy you're seeing, blah, blah. And he just kind of assumes that it's an ex-girlfriend and that he's like shouldn't get involved and like can't relate. And ultimately, and I think he gets sick as well. Like that shocks him, being confronted by that. And then he gets sick, and then Kurosawa comes to look after him, and then it's revealed that it's not an ex-girlfriend, it's his sister, and then the sister is like, hey, I need to stay at your place, younger brother of mine. I'm kicking you out. You have such a good friend here, such a close friend, you come and check up on him whilst he's sick. You live here for a while. So next volume, they're going to be living their domestic life as living together, which is fun and sweet and, makes me want to read the next one a lot. But I don't know when the next one's coming out because it takes a little while for these volumes to come out. But if you're a fan of BL and you like sweet, kind of pure office romance, then check this one out. Yeah, Aisha, you will like this one. I don't know too many people who have disliked this one. Don't let the name scare you off because it's funny and yeah, pure is like kind of a good word for it. The pure-hearted boys, even when their thoughts aren't always that pure-hearted, but you know what I mean. It's a good time. It's a good time. Definitely recommend. And kind of following up on that, similar themes. Yes, read it, Ethan. It's really, really good, and I think most people would agree that it's well worth a try, if not buying. And the fact that it has been so popular recently, the fact that it's had a live action adaptation has been really good. And you can watch that on Crunchyroll, I think, as I said prior. But speaking of sweet relationships, lovely couples, and living together, after that, I read the Volume 3 and Volume 4 of Sweat and Soap, which is an ongoing, although I think it's coming to an end or has recently ending. It's ending soon. Seinen romance about a 26-year-old woman who has a complex, kind of deep anxiety over her body odor and how much she sweats. And in doing so, she is very rigorous about her personal hygiene. And so she uses a particular brand of soap because she really likes the smell, the scent of it. And one day she runs into, she's admiring the next season's scents, the next season's products, where one of the designers or developers, I guess, product developers, sees her in the lobby, and not only sees her, but smells her. And her smell is like the most attractive thing to him, very inspiring, and it kind of really captures his attention. And he turns out to be the one in charge of all of her favorite soaps. And so initially their relationship is kind of born from this weird, like, let me smell you because it really inspires me, and I'm having issues trying to figure out what to do for this upcoming product, to a more romantic relationship. And it's really good. Another series that I have been reading digitally, although once I'm buying books again, which I haven't. Okay, so my explanation was that I had to buy. I wanted to be fully informed when coming into the. Hey Ray, welcome to the live stream. What are you doing up, Missy? It's very late for you. But So I bought a whole bunch of volume ones digitally of series that I wanted to read before recording the podcast. And so it was a whole bunch of titles that I was planning on reading, but needed to get in. So I had an opinion about them, to be able to talk about them in some capacity for the podcast, which has not yet gone up, but hopefully will do in the next couple of days. Anyway, Sweat and Soap Volume 1 was one of the series that I picked up, which was amazing because it ended up ranking on my top 5 list for favorite debuts of this year. And I read one and I couldn't stop at volume 1. So I subsequently bought the next volumes. And I had read 1 and 2 last week. And so this week I read 3 and 4. And oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. So, I mean, Christmas time, I feel like 5-hour naps just come with the territory. It's so much, there's so much going on, and then you eat food, and then you hibernate, and then your whole sleep schedule is wrecked until at least the 3rd of January, because time is a construct, and I can only imagine in places where they're still under strict quarantine, not that you are, Ray, but in the US and other places, just how much more of a weird, like, in-between liminal period it is right now. But I definitely understand the 5-hour naps. And yes, Sweat and Soap is so good. So I read volume 3 and 4. I love the main characters. I love the couple. I really love how the relationship is depicted. It's probably one of the best adult, like, romantic relationships in manga currently. There's a lot of discussion, communication, which is wonderful. A lot of discussion on, like, limits and boundaries and consent, and they're just really great characters to follow. They're so super sweet, and the way that the people around them interact with them, and how both of them have changed and adapted whilst in the relationship, and that whole idea of becoming a better person in order to support the people you care about. And generally, I mean, that for anyone in your life, but that does typically happen when you're a romantic relationship. You complement each other, and you hopefully would support each other and better yourself as a person in the long run. I'm glad that there's a lot of love for Sweat and Soap in the chat. It's really good. For those who haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. And I think it's only going to be 7 or 8 volumes long, so not super duper long. Definitely worth the investment. I also understand this, Ethan. Like, I sometimes, okay, in the lead up to Christmas, because here we had, we invited people over, right? We are not currently, where I live, there's no coronavirus problems. We don't have any cases. We don't have any community spread. So it was okay to have people over. We only had 3 people over, in saying that. We had some family friends, a married couple, and then an additional friend of my sister's. And the amount of cleaning that we had to do in order to be like, yes, people can come to visit, is absurd. So I don't know, not so much my room. I keep my room pretty tidy, but every so often, especially when I do, like, unhauls and reorganization and stuff like that in the collection room, it will take me all day and then all night, and then it'll be 4 a.m. and I'm like, oops, should probably go to sleep. The time goes fast when you're having fun. Not that cleaning is inherently fun, but once you get invested, you know. Anyway, Sweat and Soap. Sweat and Soap is really great. And the most recent volume that I read, volume 4, had a discussion on our main characters as to taking the next step and moving in together and what that indicates for their relationship and how they can work together to be comfortable with a living together, like a living situation where you are with somebody like outside of work 24/7, presumably. I mean, you're living with someone. It's a lot more of a commitment. You learn and are exposed to people a lot more, your partner a lot more than when you're just dating and you only see each other at specific times. But it was really good. It was really good. I mean, I don't like saying it's really good, but it makes my heart feel warm, right? It just, oh my goodness. We also, in that, we had another trip. We had a vacation, but in that series, it was for Kotaro, the obviously main male character's birthday, where the two decide to take the day off work and go and visit. I think they go to Hokkaido, and they're in their accommodation has outdoor baths, and so it's the first time, like, that's a different sort of intimacy that they haven't shared together yet, and it was really good. It's really good. Yes, I 100% agree, Ethan. And when you say that, I do hope that there's more and more series in English where we see lovely relationships like this in manga. I will say, in saying that, when recording the podcast last week with Ray, we discussed about how much good romance manga came out this year, 2020. So many of our favorite debuts for the year, as well as our notable mentions, were romance, and just really well-suited, sweet, lovely series, books with characters that you could root for and relationships that you could root for, without the problematic elements that so much romance is filled with. And it's just a really positive thing to see, and to see how, I don't know whether it's just what I've been reading has been changing, or what other people have been reading has changed in how the market is licensing stuff. But we've had some really wonderful romance of all shades, whether that be heterosexual, whether that be Yuri, whether that be BL, or just across the entire spectrum of romance manga. We've seen a great uptick in just really wonderful, non-problematic, non-fetishistic as well romance. And in saying that, Sweat and Soap does have this, like, discussing the premise in where the whole, like, initial attraction is based off of scent, and our main male character being incredibly attracted to his girlfriend's smell and takes a big old whiff of her at every opportunity. But it's never, like, there's that element, but it's never super creepy and never super weird outside of, like, oh, yeah, that's just what he's into, and it's kind of weird, but it's not, like, horrendously off and strange. And it kind of rides the same line as Mysterious Girlfriend X, in where the premise sounds weird and gross and very fetishistic-y, but the actual romance and the character interaction is very, very well grounded, sweet, and a wonderful thing. Like, it just really likable and entertaining. Yes, cherry magic drama. I've been basking in the cherry magic manga, so everyone should just bask in cherry magic. It's wonderful. And again, Sweat and Soap, cherry magic. There's this is a good, lots of good romance currently. Yeah, I think just across the board, it's not necessarily that we've seen a shift in what's been published, but there's just so much more being published. We get so many titles licensed and released that just through sheer numbers, through sheer glut of availability, there is something for everyone. There's good stuff. There's good stuff happening all of the time. It's all really great. And there's plenty of series that came out this year that I'm not into, weren't ever licensed or made for me. And that's also great. Like, I'm happy when people can have the stuff that they enjoy, as long as they're not hurting anyone else with it, and as long as they're not being stupid about it, then it's all a great thing. It's all a great thing. I also, yes, very good point, right, in that obviously, like, everybody has certain stuff that they're into, and not everyone's going to agree that the same sort of thing is sexy. And if you can have an open conversation about those elements of fetishes and such, then that's a part of a healthy relationship, and you shouldn't feel ashamed, again, just so long as you're not hurting anybody. As long as you are in a consensual relationship, if your fetishes are part of that, then that's totally okay, and that's a great thing. Live your best life, right? Live your best life. Nobody should judge you except for yourself, so long as you're being a good person and everyone is on the same page. Yes, and thank you, welcome everybody. There's so many comments in this stream right now. I'm glad. Yeah, also I do recommend Mysterious Girlfriend X. Again, premise is kind of weird, spit, all of that. But it's so good. It frames first love and a first serious relationship so well. And I really hope that we may see this communication in print one day. It is currently being published digitally, thanks to J Novel Club, the same mangaka. But it's both really good. They're both really good. And if you haven't read the manga, the anime is also really wonderful. That was how I was introduced to the series. And despite the spit, it's just really sweet and really strong first love, coming of age, exploring adolescence and sexuality without being perverted, without like sexualizing the teenage characters, which is kind of amazing when you consider. Yeah, so it looks like we're all on the same page, which is really good. So again, I will reiterate for the 400th time, read Sweat and Soap. It's really, really great. I read 4 volumes over 2 weeks. And I will definitely be picking up the print volumes once shipping is a little less precarious. Currently, I'm just going to wait a couple months. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to go out of print. So I don't mind waiting. And I don't mind double dipping either, especially on series that I really love a lot. which is what Sweat and Soap turned out to be for me. But yeah, so 2 great romances. Really, really good. I followed that up with another series that I absolutely love. Very different genre, but just as lovely. This is another volume that I've had sat in my monthly stack for a little while. And yeah, I'd meant to read it. I had a million other things. I had all of those debuts to read before I could dive into kind of my ongoing stuff. And that is volume 6 of Witch Hat Atelier. So this is the ongoing fantasy series about a young witch or a young girl called Coco who discovers the truth behind magic and is taken into under the mentorship of a witch called Quifrey, who is teaching her the ins and outs. And there are a bunch of other kind of apprentice witches there who she is at various levels of friendship with. And so it's her discovering about this magical world and the limitations on magic. Meanwhile, so good witches within this universe are regarded as the pointed caps or pointed hats. So they have obviously a pointed hat like so. And then there's this evil faction called the brimmed caps or the brimmed hats, which have the more, I guess, traditionally witch-looking hat. And they are trying to reinstate interest in forbidden magic, which is majority of magic that has to do with changing the human body. So obviously stuff like creating chimera, looking for immortality, but also a lot of health magic. So in the subsequent decades and centuries since the huge split between the two factions, they've been at odds, right? And the brimmed caps seem to have their eye on Coco and the possibilities that she may bring to the magical world. And so she's trying to find her place amongst her friends and amongst people who are magic users. Hi, Ren. Don't apologize. Thank you for popping in. Yeah. I see a lot of conversation about Mysterious Girlfriend X. Yeah, I know that, like, obviously spit is a weird, gross thing, and not on everyone's radars. But I think, as Ethan says, it's at some point it kind of falls to the wayside. It really never was the whole point of the thing. And outside of like some moments here and there, especially in the later half, like once you hit the midway point, it really like forgets or doesn't think about that aspect very much. But anyway, yes. So I'm not going to talk about Mysterious Girlfriend X anymore. But Witch Hat Atelier. So this volume is kind of the follow-up to... So in the last couple volumes, there was a test that a couple of the young witches had to do in order to try and get like their next qualification. But the brim caps struck. Bad stuff was happening. And oh my god, oh boy, I don't remember his name. What is his name? I can't remember. Okay, there's a boy witch, apprentice witch, and some stuff happens to him in the later, like earlier volumes, and they kind of wrap up that, and there's potential for that. So I love all of the characters in Witch Hat Atelier. There's obviously like a lot of magic, but also like mystery and awe, interest, enthusiasm from various different characters, and it's a really wonderful series. a really wonderful world to jump into, despite there being like this underlying stress and friction between these two factions. But so this is kind of the fallout from the problems in the most recent the prior volumes to this. And so we have Coco and her friends, or her fellow atelier apprentices, going to the Great Hall in order to obviously report what happened and tell those in charge what's been going on and what they remember and yada yada yada. And they are sent to this magical city that is underwater, but it's like this whole town, and that's where most witches live, most magical folk live who become witches. It's just really, I really love the series. Like, I've said that about literally every series that I've talked about so far, but there's something really magical about the series in ways that a lot of other fantasy in all media, right, kind of sticks to a particular style of how magic is represented, especially in European fantasy, which is kind of the setting of this. The fact that spells and magic are created through drawing and illustration and pictograms is really like creative and wonderful, and in a visual medium, an illustrated medium like manga, it's just so much more effective. Okay, also, I love this character who's just introduced in this volume. Also interesting, like, disability representation, because he uses this, obviously, like, four-legged chair to get around. And we see later on, like, I believe he's paralyzed from the waist down. He can't walk, because he can't... there's a later chapter where he's trying to like move out of bed, and you can tell it's done without being able to move the lower half of his body. So it's really interesting. It was a really great point that I'd seen about this particular volume prior to having read it, in that it's a great example of how you can have a fantasy world and still have really strong disability representation. The idea that fantasy, like, if you had magic, then disability wouldn't exist anymore, is something that the series has already covered and has already handled really well with color blindness. But physical, like, I don't know why he can't walk. It doesn't matter. But the idea that in this fantasy world, there are still mobility devices, there are still ways you can be disabled and exist within a magical world without the author or writer or whatever having to hand wave. It's like, oh, well, we have magic, so we know how to heal all of that, especially in a setting like this where human and health magic is not allowed because of this, this faction between the pointed caps and the brimmed caps. It's really good. It was really cool to see. It's always really creative as well. It thinks really outside of the box with how the magic is utilized, how spells and the characters interpret them and apply them. Is just really creative and wonderful, and unlike a lot of, I guess, easier routes you could go with this sort of setting, I think Ray's point as to the different types of learners is really on point as well, because all four girls who are within Coco's group all have very different personalities and different magic styles that correspond with their personalities and are representative of how just because you're learning the same things doesn't mean you express them in the same ways. And obviously, individual strengths are very different between individuals. So, yeah, if you haven't been reading Witch Hat Atelier, definitely do. It's wonderful. It's ongoing, obviously, so I don't know how much longer it will. There's a lot more to still explore. I don't see the series ending anytime soon. What I do want from, not even from this series necessarily, but I want Kodansha to license the spin-off food manga set in Witch Hat Atelier world, because I would buy that. It is all of my interests. Yeah, I want that one. I want that one. And kind of in line with that, it funny that, yeah, Harry Potter and you can't use magic to cook, like, excuse. And Ray's wonderful follow-up. Again, not the limited scope in which so much fantasy and or magic school, magic society series are based on is so limiting. It's so limiting. And I say this as someone who, was and I guess is to a lesser extent a Harry Potter fan. I grew up with a lot of fantasy in my life. I talk about Discworld all the time, which is less magical than Harry Potter, because the magic has like interesting limitations on it in that series. We're not going to discuss Discworld for the up 10th time in these live streams. But yeah, Witch Hat Atelier feels like its own thing, and all of the characters exist within this world in an organic way, and it doesn't just like hand wave societal issues by saying like, oh well, there's magic, so we don't have to worry about that, or of course we have magic, so we don't have to do this, or of course you have to do this because magic isn't gonna be good for that. It's kind of the opposite of the you can't use magic to cook thing from Harry Potter, because you can't use magic to heal in Witch Hat Atelier because of, again, the schism between the good and the bad groups. But you can use it for food and medicine preparation. You still need a human element in there, but like these characters will make tea with all their magical gadgets and use fire spells and whatever else to cook. So it's like, yes, you can. You can't like just pop it into existence, but magic is still involved, and I think that's like a much cooler way to think about it. But yes, everybody, I'm glad that so I'm seeing some support for the food spinoff, because it's I've only seen the covers for it, and I think it's a different creative team, but Shirahama obviously has like some oversight on it. But I just really want it as both a food manga fan and a Witch Hat Atelier fan. It may happen. It may happen. This is a very popular series. I would be surprised if there wasn't at least some interest from publishers in licensing the spin-offs. We've gotten all the millions of spin-offs and like guidebooks and everything else from stuff like Ancient Magus' Bride, and like that we have that Fate Stay Night cooking manga. Like I'm sure there is an interest in getting the food series of Witch Hat Atelier. I want it, and yeah, so that's all I read for that. Also, it ends on kind of a cliffhanger. It introduces a conundrum. It introduces actually, it opens up on Quifrey waking up again, and there's a mystery as to like what has he been hiding? What's his role in magical society, and why is he not live in this magical under the ocean city? I look forward to reading it. Is all I gotta say. Next. Exactly, Aaron. This is what happens when you put more than 3 seconds into creating your magic system, and then also apply that magic system in a logical way to how society works and to how humans deal with the tools that they are given and the skills that they develop. But we will no longer bitch about the other magic series from She Who Must Not Be Named, because it makes me angry. Next is another BL title. This is a spin-off, kind of sequel, kind of prequel mashup thing of another book, single volume book, another BL that I absolutely loved. Didn't expect to. Didn't really know what to expect. Heard good things about it. When it was licensed, didn't know anything about it. No clue. Had no idea. And the title was like, okay, that doesn't sound like my thing. I'm not into it. Also, Tokyo Pop, don't want to get involved. But we know that I'm not a hypocrite, and if something does catch my interest and Tokyo Pop licenses it, I will buy it. I will support it, even though it hurts my moral code. Anyway, so I read the original, or what this book is based off of, with kind of middling expectations. I'd heard good things from a couple of my mutuals on Twitter and friends, things like that. And I loved it. It made me cry. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try the spin-off. And this one didn't make me cry, but I did also really love it. And that is Don't Call Me Daddy, by Goro Kanbei. The title is so bad, right? Like the original, or what this is based off of, is a book called Don't Call Me Darling. No, Don't Call Me Dirty, aka in Japanese, Dirty Darling, which is an even worse title. So Don't Call Me Dirty is better. And also that like thematically ties in to the story. Okay, so anyway, Don't Call Me Dirty is a story about a 26-year-old guy, gay guy, who's had a lot of issues with all of his boyfriends in the past. He's never really had a relationship that had like a loving partner. He's never had someone who actually like cares about him. And he's also the only son of a single father who runs liquor store. That's the word. And next door is another store that sells all of these snacks. And the old man who works there, he's just really out of it. Like they call him Freeze or Mr. Freeze or something, because he just doesn't even move until 6 p.m. when he has to close up shop. The main character of that series, he kind of looks after that store as well as the liquor store. Well, he leaves his dad to run the liquor store, and then he looks after the snack store. And not like nobody really goes there except for the local kids. But one day, a homeless man comes to try and purchase some food. and they like through various circumstances they become friends. They get closer. Obviously, as a gay man, there's a perception in society, and he kind of harbors these feelings of, because of the bad relationships in his past, he harbors these feelings of disgust with himself, and that like gay people see him as dirty, as like not right, which is obviously, not true, but it's that whole societal perception of that, and also having no self-confidence because you haven't had supportive people in your life, and then also kind of bonding with this homeless stranger who, again, society sees as like lesser and dirty and not worth looking after or treating as human. And so yeah, there is really sweet. It's really sweet. And it made me cry, and I loved it. Anyway, so. As I said, the main character of that series, Shoji, yes, he is kind. He's a sweetheart. Shoji, his dad is old, like he's 50 odd year old, single parent, has raised him by himself pretty much for a majority of his life. But the next door, the snack place, the son of the guy who runs it is another guy in his 50s. He's 54 or something. But he's a like high flying lawyer. And you see it kind of in the original book. Yeah, so Kami Daddy is their story leading up to like when young, and they were kind of raising him together, but then they were spending a lot of time together, and Shoji, as this little gay kid, he's like, yeah, my dad and whatever his name is, they're married, like, so of course it's like okay if I want to marry this, like one of his little friends at preschool or whatever. And then so the lawyer gets like really self-conscious and worried, and he recognizes that he has feelings for this single dad, the liquor store owner, but doesn't want to acknowledge it, doesn't want to complicate their lives, and also doesn't want to be a bad influence on this child. And so he like leaves. He walks out, he leaves. He's like, no, I can't do this. I don't want to like ruin your son and all this stuff. So they are estranged for 20 years, and my heart breaks. But just recently, obviously 20 years has passed, and now through circumstance, aka the snack store old man, has become ill. So his son, the lawyer, has come to like look after the store in his stead, or like look after everything because his father's in hospital. He's trying to figure things out, but it makes him have to actually confront these people that he cares about a lot, this man that he's in love with but doesn't want to acknowledge. And it's about a love that is one-sided and complicated and hard in a small family, and how they're trying to figure things out over decades. And it was really good and sweet and also funny. And so it's nice to see not first love. Obviously, it's not first love, but like finding new love in like in your old, like once you're older, once you hit your 50s, once you hit kind of like middle age, because so much romance is obviously focused on young people, teenagers, and people in their 20s, because obviously that's when people having proper, romantic, serious relationships. But sometimes life, like things don't work out, and you reconnect, or you meet someone later in life, and it's nice. Oh, it's nice. It was really sweet. It was really sweet and really good. I will say that I don't. It was good for different reasons than Don't Call Me Dirty, but it was still really good. And Tokyo Pop has licensed another one of this creator's works, and I will definitely be buying that one because so far it's been 2 for 2 for this creator. I loved it. I loved it, and it really kind of pulls in that the whole idea of, as obviously these men are older, and it wasn't that they didn't have feelings for each other when they were younger, but it was a lot less acceptable to be open about those. It was a lot less socially accepted. And so now how things have changed for the better. And also when you get older, you kind of become more, what's the word? Honest with yourself. You become more honest with yourself. And so you can't just ignore parts of yourself anymore. It's really good. Definitely recommend it. I have not yet read There Are Things I Can't Tell You, but I want to. And again, it's annoying because obviously Tokyo Pop. But also Tokyo Pop has been licensing a lot of really good things. And I hate it. I hate it, but I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite, so I will buy it, and I will probably love it. And I just wish that they didn't do that. Yeah, I look forward to picking it up again. It's one that I might have to wait to buy just because shipping's been all over the place for me recently, and also I've had a lot of purchases over the last couple weeks, thanks to sales, thanks to Black Friday sales and Christmas sales and all these other sales, that I just need to kind of chill for a little bit, read everything that I have already, and then I can start buying new books again. So yeah, I do think that if you enjoyed Don't Call Me Dirty, then you will like Don't Call Me Daddy. And yeah, I mean, it's a better title than Daddy Darling, but it's also not a great title. It kind of is thematically ties in with the original as well. Not as well as Dirty, but it does fit quite well with the whole larger storyline. Yeah, you see, people finding love. The other thing I like to see is more, and it might just because I haven't read a whole lot of it, is like, and you see it kind of in BL, because when you have BL or Yuri to a lesser extent, where there's a kid involved, like a cute series where it's 2 dads or 2 moms raising a kid, and there's obviously like an implication of a past relationship from one of the members of that relationship, or of that couple. But I'd like to see more like regaining or rediscovering love after a point, because we know in society that like people get married and then they live like they're married for 5 or 10 or 15 years or whatever, and then get divorced, or a relationship breaks down, or someone dies, or things happen in life. And just because you hit 40 or 50 or whatever doesn't mean that you are now no longer interested in romance, or like finding love, or having a partner, having a support system, rebuilding a family, whatever. Like there's I wish we see some more of that in media, especially in manga. But I guess people, I mean, like older people are never gonna necessarily be as interesting as younger people. Even when we are talking about josei and seinen, they are more targeted towards the like late 20s to late 30s crowd, where that first serious relationship slash like long-term relationship is being established, rather than like, oh, I've done this and I've been through this and I've had problems or something happened and now I'm starting at square one, kind of. Where do I go from here? That's also a compelling narrative that I don't think we see very much. And yeah, of course, life doesn't end after 25. I say as a 27-year-old. And it's just something I'd like to see more of. And I really appreciate this mangaka for like doing it, taking that leap. Yeah, so I definitely understand the ambiguous feeling of wanting to buy Tokyo Pop. It's just every time they have licensing, they don't have announcements. It's just like one day, oh, there's a newsletter that like, oh, here's a bunch of stuff that we've licensed. And half the time I'm like, I haven't heard of any of this. And then half the time it's like, oh my goodness, that's like a really popular title that a lot of people like. How did you get the, like, who agreed to give that to you? And then the other half, namely the BL and I'm like, I've never heard of this, but I will keep an ear out for like how it is. And then it comes out and people are like, this is great. I'm like, why is some of the cool, like, interesting stuff being less about? It's frustrating. But again, I'm not a hypocrite. I will support the books that I want to read, and by buying them, I will support them. I support legal releases. I just dislike the morally conflicted feeling I have supporting Tokyo Pop. Yeah. So, see, Aisha, you say that only about 5 years. Girl, you're 34. Like, that's not only about 5 years. That's like 5.5, 6 years. Don't you try. You're always trying to make yourself older than you are, as if you're, hitting. But, girl. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's because I've just always had a lot of people in my life who are like in their middle age and older. But there's unless like movies, even Western movies, unless it's like a very specific, like, oh yes, this man is 67 and he's just retired. Now he's rediscovering life after his wife died of cancer 10 years ago. Like, I don't know, that whole, and he starts, like, he discovers love through a peppy young 24-year-old. I'm like, oh, like, can we have like more age appropriate relationships. Girl, you ain't old. Don't even try it. But yeah, I think it's a twofold thing in that a lot of people kind of value youth. And when you are younger, even when you're an adult but younger, in your 20s and 30s, you have a freedom of sorts. And obviously for a lot of people, it's a huge period of change where they're becoming an adult. They're living on their own, they're getting married, they're having children, they're finding full-time employment, whatever. Like, there's all of these milestones in your 20s and early 30s that, and a lot of readers are that age. So it's kind of like, I can understand why a lot of stories, especially manga, focus on that age range and younger. But, and the only stuff that doesn't is like Jiro Taniguchi, like, again, like, I'm a 55-year-old man and I'm reflecting on my life back when the world was a simpler place, and like all those sorts of things, which isn't inherently bad, but is for not really the mainstream manga fan reading. But yeah, there's a conflict in that. Also, a lot of young people aren't interested in older people of an advanced age, which is like 40 and 50. I don't see as like that advanced. But again, I have a pretty skewed perspective because all my family is old and has always been old. So I'm probably a bit biased in that. But yeah, it made me appreciate this and what it was doing more than, especially as a complementary piece to the original series, which was obviously about people like a younger couple in their mid to late 20s / early 30s. And when you are talking about the father of one of those people, yeah, of course it's going to be like in his 50s, if not even older. Anyway. I'm getting sidetracked, which is fine, but yeah. Anyway, one more thing to talk about, and another one that I'm really glad to have read. The final volume of this just shipped out earlier this week. Who knows when I'll get it, but it's a short series, really fun, really wonderful. Again, something you don't necessarily see. The subject matter is something you don't see necessarily a lot of in manga or Western media as well, especially. And that is Satoko and Nara, Volume 3. This is about two foreign exchange university foreign students, international students, university students, Satoko, who is Japanese, and her roommate, Nara, who is from Saudi Arabia. Obviously, very different cultural backgrounds. They are attending university in America, which is just a third completely different culture. And they're both, it's about their kind of day-to-day lives, learning about their relative cultures. Obviously, as a Japanese manga, it's more so introducing and explaining Saudi Arabian culture to Japanese people and readers. Because Japanese people don't need Japanese culture to be explained to them because they live it. But it makes a point in showcasing the differences, but also the similarities between people and culture and countries, and also dispelling a lot of the negative perceptions and myths of Islam and being a Muslim and Saudi Arabia. And it kind of also, it goes really into the different aspects of Islam and Muslim culture in the Middle East. So obviously how Saudi Arabia, like their culture is different from Afghanistan, is different from Iran, is different from like a lot of the UAE, all of the other countries. Like they're not all just the same thing. And so Nada has her life and her things that she does and her experiences, but then some of her other Muslim friends who come from other countries, Afghanistan, Iran, etc., they still practice Islam, but they do so in a different way. The whole thing between like burqa versus hijab versus like what is appropriate or what is normal for certain cultures versus others, and how the interpretation of certain teachings from the Quran are utilized and put into day-to-day lives. And I think like it's really nice to see a positive representation of Muslim people in anything, let's be real. And also, I really like how it's an exchange of cultures. Both of these young women are learning about each other and complementary to each other, and then also bonding as both being outsiders and, kind of adrift, unsure in their newfound home, their temporary home in America, and then again interacting with Americans and their perspective on the relative cultures that they represent, and their confusion and bafflement at American culture as well, right? It's really lovely. I also like that because there's they have a couple American friends. Kevin, who's like the biggest weeb, who is Japanese American, but he's like third generation or something. So he doesn't speak any Japanese, and he's just like really into anime and stuff. But he becomes friends with Satoko because he wants a conversation partner. And then there's Miracle, who's like, typical. I say typical. I don't want a blanket statement, but she's a white Christian, kind of hippie, I guess, or hipster maybe is a better phrase, like young woman with a name like Miracle. I don't know, like, because she says that her parents were like kind of hippies, which is why they called her Miracle. But then also there's a whole section in this where Satoko goes to help her with like this church function, fair, I don't know, thing that the church is running. And she's like super devout Protestant, which is fine, like that a lot of people are. But I was like, I don't know if hippies are that devout necessarily. But then again, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with all the various shades of Protestantism. As someone who grew up Roman Catholic, although the laxest sort of Roman Catholic. So yeah, it's interesting. There's only one more volume of this to go. It's 4 volumes in all. This was another one that started as a webcomic and found its way to published book. The first part has Nada's like arranged fiance trying to visit her in America, and without like really telling her, and their growing relationship. And obviously the last volume there's a lot of discussion about arranged marriages. One of the earlier volumes had discussion on like the multiple wives aspect of some cultures and how it's normalized, or like how that sort of family structure can work, and like why I don't know. And for me, not something I would personally be into. And in this book, like the Afghani couple, the wife is like, if my husband tried to get a second wife, I would murder him. I would murder him, and nobody would even say that it was bad, because no. Whereas for Nada, I think her family, her dad has 2 wives, and so it's very normal for her. It's just really interesting. It's perspectives that I personally, like, I don't know a huge amount about Saudi culture. I know a lot of Muslim people. I have a lot of Muslim friends, but they come from like a lot of the Southeast Asian Muslim countries, Indonesia most notably, and South African. Not that that's in Asia, but one of my other very close friends who's a Muslim is from South Africa. So it's just like, obviously, I didn't know a whole lot about it, so it's just interesting. And again, really positive, like great female friendship series, and I'm gonna be sad when it's over, but well worth the read. Again, quite fun, and that real merging of cultures, and yeah, it's funny. The art isn't like super amazing, but it's not terrible either. It works exactly for what it is, and it's funny. Like, it's quite. You can tell that Upechka like has actually lived in America and like actually has some of these experiences, more so than if they were just trying to like regurgitate secondhand stories, or through research rather than firsthand experience, how this wouldn't necessarily work as well as it does. But yeah, I that's interesting. I think we see maybe a little bit more of older couples in BL, because BL is such a huge demographic and there's so much of it around and out there. But yeah, I mean, you don't see too many Yuri series with women over 35, right? And maybe that's also an inherently gendered thing, is to men can be seen as more attractive the older they get, versus women who are seen as like their youth is their beauty and all of this other crap that society lies to us about, and forces us to believe. Anyway, we're not gonna get angry about that. But that's everything that I would be interested in some more recommendations for couples over 35 years old for any manga, but BL is probably a good starting point. But yeah, I mean, what did you eat yesterday is I love, and those are some middle-aged men right there. And again, part of the reason I love that series so much is because of the established relationship of being with someone in your later stages of life, and how you maintain a relationship for 10, 20, 30 years, and how the dynamic changes and shifts, and you grow more familiar with each other, and how life changes you and changes the people around you. It's something that's always been really interesting to me, and I would definitely be up for more recommendations of this sort. in any iteration of romantic couple, really. I'm not picky when it comes to hetero versus homosexual. I'll read it all. I'll take it all. I'll read it, whatever, as long as it's good. We know this. But yeah, that was everything that I read for this week. 5 different series, lots of really exciting, fun stuff to be excited about, that I love. It was fun seeing some of the reactions to these titles today, and I hope people do try some of these series, especially I think the BL, Witch Hat Atelier, most people know. Sweat and Soap as well. Go read that. Everyone just go read that. It's really good. What else? I also today posted my anime collection for the end of the year video. It's super not long. It's like 17 minutes, which is amazing. How did I manage that? Who knows? And yeah, Merry Christmas to everyone. I will reiterate, as I said at the beginning of the stream, Merry Christmas, everyone, or Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Whatever you celebrate at the end of the year, I hope you had a great one in a happy, healthy, safe, responsible manner. I hope everyone had a great last couple days, last week. Christmas here was pretty normal, nothing too flashy. And for me and my family, we don't really go all out with like hundreds of presents or anything like that. I got literally 2 presents, one of which you can see right here. This was my present from my sister, which is great because I needed a new bag because I need one for work. And then my other gift was these ones. I got some fancy Tiffany sunglasses that I was looking at buying for myself, and then my family bought them for me. Because I wear sunglasses literally every day. Regardless of weather, I wear sunglasses literally every day because my eyes are sensitive to the sunlight since I was 3 months old. So yeah, that was really great. But I hope everyone had a great holiday, and a great coming holidays with the New Year's as well. Stay healthy, especially in places where it is still being affected by the pandemic, and also in the northern hemisphere where it's really cold and winter right now, and people are more likely to get sick anyway. Not my problem because it is the middle of summer here. And yeah, also I hope all of your family, I hope everyone's just doing well. I hope that for at least a couple hours over this holiday season, you've had the time to kind of forget about all of the terrible things that 2020 has been and just relax for a little bit. That's all I think we can all wish for. But yeah, it is 11:30, so I need to go to bed. Merry Christmas, everyone, and I'm not going to see you before the new year, so Happy New Year as well. Bye, everyone. I will see you in the next video.